Okay, I think we are live. We are. Welcome to a brand new edition of Between the Links on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. And for those who just couldn't wait, and I'm sure there's like two or three of you out there that are aware this page exists. Thank you for joining us live on the Loudmouth MMA YouTube page. My name is Mike Heck. I am the host of this chaos, and yes, I look like I'm doing the outfield grass for the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park, just to get that joke out of the way, Eminem style. But I know I say this every week, but we got a lot to discuss. Good Lord, do we? UFC 248 has come and gone. And this weekend, we got UFC Brasilia, headlined by Kevin Lee and Charles Oliveira. And on Friday, Bellator returns to Mohegan Sun for Bellator 241, headlined by Patricio Pitbull, defending the featherweight title against Pedro Carvalho, part of the featherweight Grand Prix. Lots going on. So let's introduce the panel. First, Mr. Keith Schillen is here. He was on another level last week, as you know, most of the staff is right now. We're like 40% sunglasses right now, but let's see if Keith has cooled off at all. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. Like you said, that Bellator is at Mohegan Sun. I'm going to be there live this week. I'm assuming you probably will be too, so I'll get to see you in person. And listen, I know it's supposed to be work, but I always enjoy going to the live show. So it's like the highlight of my year, covering 2 or 3 shows a year. So I'm very excited this week.
Yes, the plan is for me to be there, so I'm excited for that as well. Love covering those events and running into you guys face to face. We have Mr. Craig Allen here, Mr. Hot Take himself. How are you, sir? Where the heck are you right now?
I'm in a hotel room in a city where the UFC will never come back to. That's Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. And listen, if imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, you get 2 donkeys wearing sunglasses like it's cool, but you got the OG right here. So don't get tripping. I'm the guy, and I'm looking to win this week. You know what, Mike? I should have made it to the finals last week.
No, don't blame me, buddy. I could actually see your laptop like in your sunglass frames. Clear as a bell.
I love how Craig tries to claim that he's the first person to wear sunglasses.
Do you watch poker at all? Those guys have been wearing sunglasses at the poker table forever.
I grew up on Corey Hart, man, so I know where it's at.
Tony Ferguson's a big listener Between the Links. That's why he was wearing the sunglasses. He's a big fan of Craig Allen.
That's right. That's right.
Not a big fan of our former guest,
friend Rodney
James.
I know. We may be getting into that later on, but moving on, despite what some people may say, there is no Heck Baker feud on the show. There just isn't. Davidson Baker, how are you, buddy? Hope you're doing well.
As do I hope the same for you, my friend and venerable host, as well as my colleagues. I have been feeling great today. I've had a pretty solid day, and I'm ready to take that momentum into a bounce-back performance.
We are very excited for that. And joining us, the special guest, you may know him as John Franklin, but tonight he is none other than Chicken Parm Dave, Keith Schillen's #1 fan. Chicken Parm Dave, what's up, buddy?
Look at you, troublemakers. Chicken Parm Dave is in the house. Mike, listen, the 5 of us are here. Tomorrow's never promised. You and Craig Allen, your stars are on the rise. It's only a matter of time before Internal Affairs starts looking into whatever Keith's doing. I'm a wild card at best. Davidson's probably got pending drug charges. So we should, capture the moment. And let me just say this. Look at us.
Look at us.
Who would have thought it?
I know.
Not me.
All right.
Do we have a theme this week? Do we have a theme this week, or are you waiting?
Mike, I feel comfortable revealing the theme at this point.
Let's hear it.
It's 80s TV shows.
Oh, I'm very excited.
80s TV shows.
Craig and Davidson are screwed.
Royally.
They are screwed.
I'm sure they were probably conceived when some 80s TV shows were playing.
I stayed in my mother's womb for 6 years.
Oh, God. All right, we have to get this thing started right now. So here we go. All right, you guys all know the rules by now. Rebuttal rules in full effect per usual. Let's start with the main event of UFC 248. It's a fight that, despite the lack of meritocracy behind it, it still had a lot of people excited and intrigued as Israel Adesanya defended his middleweight title against Yoel Romero. And I'm sure most would agree that when you saw this matchup on paper, you definitely didn't expect the fight to go down the way that it did on Saturday night in Las Vegas. Adesanya wins via unanimous decision, moves to 19-0, but the fight was a bit lackluster, to say the least. And there's not a lot of action. And in typical MMA fashion, when we have these conversations, there's 2 sides in the aftermath. We have the this fight was a piece of crap. This is boring, waste of $65. Israel's overrated kinds of folks. And then there's this was kind of a boring fight, but it was a technical chess match between Adesanya and Romero. I was on the edge of my seat waiting for something big to happen. So there's two sides here. And of course, this fight would go down that way when you have two dangerous strikers. I mean, we've heard it all at this point. So Davidson, we're going to begin with you. How did you view Saturday night's main event? Are you on team technical chess match, or are you on team this fight sucked?
Kind of both. And I know that's such an awful answer and approach to take. It was obviously and clearly a terrible fight in comparison to what we all expected. But guys, here's what we need to understand, and here's what we need to remember. It's okay, because it happens. As we've clearly painted the picture, these are two high-level strikers. Not only that, high-level violence machines that are both very good at what they do. And it's okay. Dana even said after the fight, the matchmakers wanted no part of it, whether it's because it made sense or because they saw this coming. I mean, that is to be left on the table. But now the chronological timeline was also a terrible, terrible, unfortunate circumstance due to the fact that 25 minutes of hell on ice came right before it. And we witnessed it, and the fans booing, were just a little bit, they were just a little bit spoiled because of it. I, for one, see all angles here. Yes, I used a pun to halfway plug one of our other great shows on this network. Go check out All Angles if you haven't. But the fallout and the reaction, even from Israel himself, it's just been a little bit of confusion. I mean, tell me how people that watch and love this sport don't watch the first opening couple of minutes of that fight. And you can know as much as any of us all do, there's confusion going on when Yoel Romero is just walking, not even towards Israel, not even really with a plan, just 10 seconds, just about 2 minutes of just walking like this, just covered up towards him. I don't think Israel expected that, and Israel's reaction and verbal altercations after that have clearly depicted that he didn't expect it either. Yoel's history of macheting people, it's just all a whirlwind of maybe we should have saw this coming, but we got our hopes up.
John Franklin, your thoughts?
Mike, we came into this fight trying to figure out who's the boss. And what ended up happening was the fight really didn't have a lot of cheers. And at the end of the fight, we're all kind of looking for a fall guy. We're trying to figure out what happened here, who's at fault. Listen, I talked to Keith on the recap show. It's weird. I fell into the chess match part of it. Like, I fell into the, these guys are both not wanting to give an inch and give the other person, the means to end the fight and look spectacular. I know at the end of the fight, I sat there going, wow, this fight actually probably sucked. But in the moment when I was watching the fight, I fell into the chess match of it all. And I appreciated the fact that, I thought it was genius that Romero did nothing for the first 2 minutes of the first round. I mean, he did nothing for a lot more than just that. But, Keith and I just kind of came to the conclusion on the recap show that he had a great strategy, just didn't pull the trigger. So I appreciated the technical chess match of it all, but somebody had to pull the trigger and nobody did.
I got to change. Yeah, there we go. It's hard to control this thing. We're still kind of working on this whole thing. But Keith, kind of as Davidson mentioned, you and Mr. John Franklin, you guys spent an hour and 37 minutes breaking this fight down with the research, the tape study, the breakdowns, etc. What side of the fence are you on now that this fight is over?
Yeah, I mean, when we did the breakdown, it was nothing but happy days. But listen, this fight was worse than having growing pains. All right, I'm not gonna do this the whole show. Dude, this fight was absolutely terrible. I mean, and if you think otherwise, you're just being a hipster. I mean, I guess different strokes for different folks. And if you didn't grow up in a different world, you would say this was terrible. Listen, Romero's strikes per rounds were 4, 7, 9, 6, and 14. Adesanya's strikes per round were 2, 11, 12, 11, and 12. Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk did that in one round. There was 0 takedowns. Not a single person was rocked. Adesanya admitted that he won the fight with just leg kicks. And we're not talking about Jose Aldo going crazy on Uriah Faber's leg and chopping it down. No, we're talking about 25 total leg kicks in 25 minutes. That's 1 per minute for you guys who can't do the math. Adesanya did not land a single punch in the first round. Not a single punch. And it's not like hyperbole. Like, look it up. Not a single punch. The most punches Adesanya landed in a round was 4. 4 punches was the most. And he won the fight. This fight was terrible. And anybody who's saying otherwise is just being John Franklin and being a hipster.
Craig Allen, you got to hear these gentlemen all speak. Now we get your thoughts on the UFC 248 main event. What side of the fence are you on? You on team tactical chess match, or you on team sucky fight?
Listen, Mike, I paid $64.99 Canadian dollars for this pay-per-view. And in the first 4 fights in the main card, I got $64.98 worth of my money. This fight was worth a penny. It was terrible. To Keith's point, if you look at total strikes in this fight, you had 221 total strikes actually thrown. Just thrown. If you look at the worst fight that's ever happened in UFC history, there was a total of 100 strikes thrown. If you do the math, that's about 33.3 in the worst fight ever, 44.2 per round in this fight. And the worst fight ever, again, being Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou. You want to compare this to a whole lot of different things, you got to look no further than a former champ that everybody was on the hype train. And then once he became champ, he got boring. Look at Tyron Woodley. Look at the last 3 fights that he had before he became champ. He knocks out Stun Gun. He wins a split decision over Kelvin Gastelum, and then he knocks out Robbie Lawler. You look at a guy in Israel Adesanya. Now, yes, he's undefeated. Tyron Woodley wasn't. Kickboxer versus wrestler who became a kickboxer. Knocks out Brunson, decision against Silva, decision against Gastelum, knocks out Whitaker. So what's the plan from here? Are people going to jump off the Israel Adesanya train? Or are they going to start making that Tyron Woodley comparison? Maybe not, but in terms of this fight, it was boring. And it's just a shame that it came after such a great fight.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to award points when, you know, everyone made great points, and I think everyone sort of were on the same page. I didn't think the fight was bad. I don't think it was a technical. I just thought it was weird. Like, it's just a strange fight. Like, I guess that's the best word I could use to describe it. It was just a strange fight.
Mike.
Across the board. Yes.
Mike, before you award points, there was one other thing I wanted to propose to the panel, and I wanted to see if you guys even have the resources to do this. I feel like Keith seems to know you the best each week, and all the other guys know you pretty well, not as much as they are. I wonder if we would all guess who Mike's going to give the points to, and then Mike will award the points, and we can see who's right. Are we all in a position to do that?
Go ahead if you want.
Yeah, I'll guess. He's giving the points.
Well, no. You can't do it that way because you have to write it down. Come on. What do you do?
All right,
you tell them you're going to affect them.
Write it down.
Well, I had the best answer, so the answer is me.
Well, okay, then write yourself down. I disagree with you.
What are you going to do with what you write down? You're going to hand it to Mike like he's sitting right next to you?
You're going to do what Craig's doing, Davidson. Come on, keep up.
Is part of their, this is part of their terrible gimmick. He's setting up a joke.
I'm not,
Davidson
I promise.
Can't write.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Davidson, if you need help spelling, let us know. All right,
I'm excited. I've already awarded the points, and John, you'll be impressed with what just transpired. But go right ahead. We got a Davidson. We got a Craig.
Keith thinks who?
Keith says Keith.
I had the best answer.
Davidson, who you got? This isn't complicated.
Davidson.
Lord.
So
I feel like I'm in the John. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Sure, I started earlier, but it did air in the 80s too.
Oh, look at you with the
Craig.
scores on the bottom.
10 points for Craig Allen.
You gave him to
look at
Davidson, you donkey.
No. Keith 9, Craig 10, Davidson 9, John 9.
Oh, okay, I
Oh.
see it now. I
All
get it.
right, let me go back in and
Craig literally
Give
had the
you
worst
8.
answer that round.
I thought it was pretty good.
My answer of like talking about the single punch was the best answer.
you just yelled. No, it was
I
good
thought it
point.
was all right.
It was all good. You guys are all great.
All right, let's go.
You guys are all great. All right. So that's the main event. Let's move on. Let's talk about the fight that stole the show, along with my eyeballs and possibly my entire heart. The co-main event for the women's strawweight title. We had Zhang Wei Li taking on Ioana and Jacek. Holy shnikes, did these two deliver in spades? Now, if you watched the fight, you know how good it was. And if you didn't, it sucks to be you because you missed a damn good fight. But how good was it? People are saying that this was the greatest fight in women's MMA history. That's the constant narrative that has come out of UFC 248. So, John Franklin, that statement that everyone keeps throwing out there, that this was the greatest women's fight in MMA history, is that undervaluing the epic battle that we saw on Saturday night, or could it be actually overvaluing the fight?
Well, let me just tell you, from doing the recap show with Keith Schillen, I've never met both a cop and a prisoner, right? Keith's a cop and a prisoner. He's a cop in Rhode Island, and he's a prisoner of the moment. He's going to tell you this is the best fight he's ever seen. It's all recency bias. I'm going to go ahead and jump the gun on him and tell you that he's been telling everybody that has ears this is the best fight of all time. It's not better than Holly Holm versus Miesha Tate, so let's just get all that out of the way, right? The back and the forth of that fight, way better. These girls just played Rock'em Sock'em Robots for 5 rounds, and props to them for doing it, but it's not the best fight. I will say this. They both competed at a championship level, which makes them a couple of golden girls, and it means that because both of their stars are on the rise, both of them are immensely popular, there is no B-side here. They are also the A team. It was a fantastic fight. I hope the UFC takes this fight and uses it to promote these two girls moving forward. And really, it was a good enough fight that they could launch shoulder programming off of it. I mean, it was a fantastic fight. Just wasn't the best fight ever.
Keith, how excited are you to be immediately following John Franklin, a.k.a. Chicken Parm Dave, right now?
Well, first of all, to answer the question, we are absolutely underselling it. Listen, we're going to be talking about this fight for years. When we're in our wonder years, they're the best female duo since Laverne and Shirley. Listen, this isn't the best female fight ever. This is the best MMA fight ever. I was a fan since July 14th, 1995, and not a single fight was better than this one. Listen, all 5 rounds were amazing. All 5 rounds will be candidate for round of the year. This is the no-brainer. No fight is touching it. Fight of the year. These women, the pace these women put on was absolutely incredible. Let me break down the facts of life for you, John. Let's talk about some of the all-time great fights. John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson landed 244 significant strikes. Lawler, Rory McDonald, 156. Henderson Shogun won 172. You know how many significant strikes happened in this one? 351. That is more than Lawler, McDonald, and Henderson Shogun combined. Literally, Joanna Jędrzejczyk landed more strikes by herself than Shogun and Henderson did together in their fight. This fight is I can't even I'm going crazy because this wasn't one of these fights where it got sloppy and then it was back and forth. It was big Lawler and McDonald won. The first round was freaking terrible of that fight. Listen, I'm not even going off my notes anymore because that's how crazy I'm going about this fight. You want damage? How about Ioana's head? One of the grossest injuries I've ever seen. It looked like her head was going to explode. It looked like she was in one of those fun houses in the mirrors that make your body look good. That's what looked like she stuck her head in that position. This fight was absolutely amazing, astonishing, beautiful, excellent, incredible, mind-blowing. Whatever you want to do. Listen, it's good to rewatch. Grab some chips. Rewatch this fight. And the best thing about this is that it didn't get sloppy. Their technique in the 5th round was just as good as their technique in the 1st round. Their pace in the 5th round was just as good as the first one. You cannot say that about all these other time fights. This is the greatest MMA fight of all time. And if these were men, everybody would be agreeing with it.
Craig Allen, you've heard 2 different sides of the spectrum here. And sometimes, like John Franklin said, we can be prisoners of the moment, right? That fight between Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, in my opinion, was everything we hoped for and then some. But in your opinion, there's been so many great fights over the years. Is the statement greatest fight in women's MMA history, is that overvaluing or undervaluing those 25 minutes of absolute war?
Mike, I'm going to quote someone who's departed us in the past couple of years. I'm going to quote the great David Bowie. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, "This is ground control to Major Tom." Because Major Tom to my right has no idea what he's saying with those stupid big headphones. I think my stupid big headphones look a little bit better. And listen here, Major Tom. This wasn't even the best fight of 2020. If you go into Tapology's MMA's best fights of 2020, there's a title fight that tops this one in John Jones and Dominic Reyes. You got Fili Youssef, Jones Reyes, Felder Hooker, Johns Gravely, and then they have Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Now, to get to the real question that's at hand, is this the best women's title fight of all time? 110%, without question. And I actually think that this list here from Tapology is absolute rubbish. I think this is the greatest fight that we've had so far this year, regardless of weight class, gender, promotion, anything. This is one of the best fights that I've ever seen. If you were to show an MMA fan, somebody that's a casual fan that might watch 1 or 2 events per year, and they didn't watch this, I would put them in front of a television, then tell them to watch all 5 rounds of this fight. Tell me how they scored it because it was so decisive. Of course, it ended in split decision. It was a wonderful fight. It was great technique by both fighters, great coaching by both corners, and just an absolute masterpiece. And it outshined a fight that a lot of people had marked on their calendars as one of the best of the year in Adesanya and Yoel Romero, which of course didn't deliver. But the shine definitely goes to a co-main event. I think the rankings there are rubbish. I just brought them up to point out how ridiculous they were. They're just about as ridiculous as Keith's big headphones.
Davidson Baker.
I invoked my rebuttal clause already, but I'm going to probably take it back just because I want to remind my friend.
I went full circle, you dingus.
I want to remind my friend Craig something that he surely already knows and has surely been privy to in the past when it comes to Tapology's rankings. Those are all algorithms, brother. Those are not actual people putting them up on a pin. Those are all based on algorithms. So the fact that you and I both share the same opinion that those are quote unquote rubbish is all because of our good friend Math. Anyway, to answer this question, I'm overjoyed, Mike, that you asked this question, and I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn. This very rhetoric, believe it or not, popped in my head yesterday, and I knew you were going to ask it, and the angle I'm going to take on it is people, as I almost dropped my microphone, it's 2020, man. Obama v. Romney is no longer on the horizon. Rousey v. Tate is not airing on Showtime on Saturday. Women's MMA, especially at 115 pounds, should not continuously carry the predetermined asterisk that women's fights get that absolutely has to be mentioned in the conversation of the sport in its totality. What I mean by that is stop classifying fights just because females are involved as the greatest female fight. Keith said it, man. Hands down so far, fight of the year so far. It's going to be tough to top it. When telling someone else how great that fight was, I'll even pose the question to my fellow panelists. When you want to tell someone else how great that fight was, do you need to use the word women's in the sentence? Do any of you need to do that?
No.
I don't either. And at the end of the day, maybe this isn't the angle that some people took for this question. I think it's underselling it because of that very rhetoric. The reason, Mike, that I think you asked this in the first place is because I had a bone to pick with that rhetoric as well. And at least I hopefully think you agree, or else I kind of look dumb here. I get that using that type of context delivers information about a fighter's chromosome makeup. But seriously, MMA fans, MMA Twitter, MMA media, it's getting old. And to answer your question, yes. I do believe that that label presented in the question undersells it. And that fight is going into the same exact wing, into the same exact Hall of Fame that a fight that just got inducted moments before they took the walk ascended on upon Saturday night, and for good reason. It was a hell of a fight.
Keith, do you want to use that rebuttal, or did you fall in the same trap that Davidson did with Craig's answer?
I wasn't listening to Dave. Every time Davidson talk, I just ignore. So yeah, I'm gonna use my rebuttal because I don't know what trap. Craig is not clever enough to do traps. Listen, I don't know if we grew up on Sesame Street because I feel like I'm talking to a 6-year-old who can't figure out the Tapology ranking system. First of all, as Davidson did say, the one part I listened to is it is an algorithm in math. And what?
I'm just laughing.
Like he said in the first 10 seconds. But it's also fan voted, and people haven't updated their rankings yet. So that's why it's at 4. Give it 2 weeks from now, it's going to be clearly number 1. Listen, Tapology's ranking. Tapology's a great source if you want to see who's fighting who and who was the favorite and this and that. But its rankings is absolutely terrible. It wasn't until recently, until I messaged Nolan King, who works for him, that they had fighters ranked that were dead. Like the 200th best heavyweight was Kimbo Slice, like 4 years after he died. Listen, right now, if you go to the all-time greatest fighters, 3-1, Shinsuke Nakamura, who's 3-1 in MMA, is 3 spots over Alexander Volkov. Ryland Gracie, who's 0-0, has not fought yet, is all-time better fighter than 2-weight world champion David Branch. 0-1 amateur Rhoda Gracie who's 0-1 amateur, never fought pro, is ranked higher than UFC champion Nico Montana. Like this is his argument why the fight's not great. Like, give me a break.
Craig has been just chomping at the bit. He's been going like this for the last 90 seconds. Go ahead.
I'm going to continue my David Bowie song, and it's going to encapsulate Keith's rebuttal. And it's near the end of the song, and it goes, "Here I am floating around my tin can, far above the moon. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do." Because, Keith, you dug into the trap card, Bubba. I said the rankings don't matter, and it was one of the best fights of all time. It's regardless of gender. You and Davidson, you made a whoopsie. It's okay. You'd learn stuff like that on Sesame Street if you paid attention. The rankings don't matter.
Why bring it up? Like, seriously, like, I get it, Craig. I get it, dude. You can't debate, so you do these wacky, stupid shit. Like, John's the same way. He does what? This show used to be serious. We used to like debate and have good debate. I get it, man. You're not on my level, so you got to like try to like get Mike to give you points by like singing a song and being wacky. Like, it's cool, man. But like, bring some facts, man.
I gotta ask where the oopsie came from too. What are you talking about?
He buried his own like argument.
I'm not the same color as the bottom on my microphone. That's all I can say.
Chicken Parm Dave would like to rebut. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, where do I start? Well, let's dismiss Keith's argument pretty quickly. He's right. This show used to be serious until he brought those headphones out, and then shit went out the window. So that was the first time we lost all seriousness. But secondly, Keith said these rankings don't matter, but give it 2 weeks and she'll be on top of the rankings. So you can't dismiss the rankings and then say give it a couple weeks and she'll be on top of them. Either it's part of your argument or it's not. Also, if I'm looking at the most significant strikes thrown in a fight, I'm looking at Colby Covington and Robbie Lawler, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, Nate Diaz, Donald Cerrone, Joanna Jacek, Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jacek, Valerie Letourneau, Tony Ferguson, Rafael dos Anjos. Is this a list of great fights of all time? What does total strikes have to do anything with whether or not a fight is great? There's a lot of things.
That's cool. That's cool. But
just stop it. That's a good point.
No. Because I never said total strikes. I never once said total strikes. I said significant strikes.
Which is even sillier because what's a significant strike? And who's the significant to?
No. That's the person to actually land. I know. Listen, I get it, man. You're like you say.
You want to talk about significant strikes? You scored the fight for a girl who has a brand new forehead. You don't think the strikes she got hit with were significant? Her forehead looks like she's from Mars. Okay. And you think there's no significance to the strikes she received?
What are you talking about?
Not enough to score it for her.
Listen, first of all, the strike that busted her head was actually her headbutting the other girl. They showed that. Okay, so that's first one.
There's a lot of headbutts. They don't turn someone's front of their forehead. You know why this happens? Tell
that to the former heavyweight champion in boxing that happened to him. Remember that? I don't know the guy's name, but the guy's
Rahman.
Don't say like headbutts aren't important. Mark Coleman's in the UFC Hall of Fame because of headbutts.
Dude, like hematoma and a new forehead are two different things.
Headbutts because of how dangerous it is. What are you talking about?
What was the strike that busted her nose? Was that a headbutt too?
Listen, I get it.
She looks like the Halloween costume, Keith. You're telling me she didn't get any significant strikes?
All right, cool. That's cool. No, I didn't say it. I literally said that Weili Zhang landed like 150 significant strikes. I literally said that Weili Zhang landed more significant strikes than the entire Robbie Lawler-Rory McDonald fight. I said that. So like saying I didn't say it. Listen, John, I get it, man. You're a cool guy. You have this little gimmick.
You don't get it. That's the problem. That's the problem with this answer. If you got it, we wouldn't be still talking to you.
I'm going to wrap this one up with a bow. In the words of Frank Costanza, serenity now, sanity later.
Touche.
Honestly, the show's turning to garbage now. Like those gimmicks and stupid singing and shit. Like, let's have like actual debate.
You just lost the debate.
You're talking about total strikes. You know what total strikes means? It means like if I throw a punch at you and you move out of the way, that's a total strike. A significant strike is if I throw a punch and it blasts you in the nose. That's a significant strike. There's a big difference.
The number one thing in debating is that you don't let emotion take over if you want to win.
Well, I listen, I know you say that. That's cool to make up some quote by somebody. But I have had emotion take over every show, and nobody's won the show more times than me.
Do you think they count how many times you win the show? Whose line is it anyway?
That's a great point. Regardless, as you can see on the ticker, Keith gets the 10 points. I think my favorite part of the show so far is during those two rebuttals between John and Craig, watching Keith's face as he's listening and getting ready to respond. I think that's been the best part of the show so far. But we move ahead. I didn't think we'd get this heated through two questions. I thought we'd all be celebrating at least the co-main event. But let's talk about another big story from Saturday night, the return of the Sugar Show. Sean O'Malley proving Craig Allen absolutely correct last week. He went in there, he runs over Jose Quinones, finished the fight in the first round, did it without really breaking a sweat. And as if it actually needed it, 135 pounds, gets another nice shot in the arm. So, Keith, we're going to start with you here. With Sean O'Malley getting that win, having a great performance like he had, what is next for him in your opinion? What direction would you go if you had the book?
Well, you already said he's 25 years old, so let's not get crazy. Let's not take a quantum leap with him up in the rankings. And that's my last reference in it because I don't like the gimmicks. And plus,
so pissed tonight.
No. Plus, let's say I'm actually better at the gimmicks with John without any prep time. I just do it off the top of my head. Anyways, like he shouldn't take on a top 15 guy. We should slow roll him, let him take on a guy that might have been top 15 at one time. I would like to see him face a wrestler, someone who's going to test him in the grappling. So I would probably go with like a Brian Caraway, like some guy that's crafty enough, someone that O'Malley can beat, but he's still a big, huge threat. So that's how the guy, if you want a name, I'd go with. But that said, we need to back up and just talk about how brilliant a performance this was. The guy threw a no-hitter. I mean, it was unbelievable. He landed everything he wanted, put him out. This is a 2-year layoff. It was absolutely brilliant by Sean O'Malley. But yeah, if you want me to give someone, I'll go with Brian Caraway.
Craig Allen?
Yeah, you know what, Mike? The show's all about using your brain and using stats and picking fighters that are still in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Keith, I don't know if you know this, but Brian Caraway last fought for Battlefield FC. So good pick there. And if you want a wrestler and a guy that can grapple,
they can sign people.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna go with a good answer here. So Sean O'Malley in the UFC has won 3 fights in a row. There's a guy who can wrestle and grapple that people are really excited about in the UFC. That's also 3-0. They both fought a common opponent who's lost 6 fights in a row. The poor guy, Tyrion Ware. That's the guy that's in common. Who's the guy he should fight? Murad Dvalishvili. You have 2 superstars in the same weight class that could become absolute world beaters and go on a tear. Why not put them against each other while they're still young in a fight that could, it could be on the main card of a pay-per-view to help sell it. It could be at the top of a fight night. It's a fight that so many people would get excited about. I think that's a perfect fight to make.
Davidson, it had been just over 2 years, almost 2 years to the day since Sean O'Malley competed, and he made up for lost time in a big way. As Keith said, he threw a perfect game, a no-hitter, so to speak. He looked absolutely fantastic. How does he follow that up?
He follows it up with something big, I would imagine. The man's already co-headlined a UFC card. Yes, I know. Nico Montano and Roxanne Modafferi was the main event. Big whoop. And opposite Tyrion Ware of all bantamweights. This guy, though, is clearly... he's more than made his way, in my opinion, into main event territory, and it's terribly unfortunate that MMA's false positive Osterine piss epidemic that transpired over the last couple of years kept him out of action, or else he'd probably have a main event or 2 under his belt already. For my selfish and guilty pleasure, if we're going to get this guy in the rankings, and I kind of agree with Keith, let's go ahead and give him one tough test outside of the top 15 to see if he's ready to really take that thing head on. I would just... call up Eddie Wineland and say, hey, man, sorry, we got to do this. Sean O'Malley and Marlon Vera. That would be like if I had a genie and if I could make everything perfect as far as Sean O'Malley's fight career is concerned. I would love to see those 2 in there. But you want to talk about an interesting matchup, and Craig had a good one with Merab. Montel Jackson is an interesting guy at 135 pounds too. He and Sean O'Malley both, just with the way that they're configured, the way that their stature is, both of them very tall and very lanky bantamweights. Montel Jackson, I think, at about 5'10", Sean O'Malley close to 6 foot. And Montel Jackson can wrestle too. I'm not saying that he's an upper echelon wrestler in this division, but Montel Jackson can grapple. And for, to break into the top 15, if he's going to do that, he might have to take a number in weight, which would set up a matchup with a guy like a Murad Dvalishvili or a Montel Jackson, because a lot of these guys towards the back end of the top 15 are already booked. My gut, though, tells me the UFC is going to rush this kid. I wouldn't even be surprised. I'm not saying this is what I would do.
10 seconds.
My gut tells me we might see Sean O'Malley and Jimmy Rivera in the same octagon before the end of the year. Not what I would do, but something tells me that could be coming by the end of the year.
It's time for Chicken Parm Dave to give his answer on this question now. Keith is shaking his head in anger. La, 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 la. Go ahead, John. What do you think? What's next for Sean O'Malley?
So, listen, the problem for Sean O'Malley is he got too close for comfort with USADA, lost a couple years of his career. For me, I think the answer is obvious. I mean, the WEC used to have the best bantamweight division there was. So what's Scott Jorgensen up to now? What about Brian Bowles? Ian McCall? How about Mike Brown? I know he's coaching at ATT, but listen, you can sign guys, right? You can sign anybody you want. Let's just bring them in. Why not?
Yeah, it's not like Brian Carey wasn't ranked
me,
top 15 like a year ago.
For me, if we're being serious, because the show used to be serious, for me, I would probably put him in there with John Dotson, just because I think it's an interesting matchup. Dotson's a 135-pound fighter. In my brain, just thinking of those two fighting is very interesting to me. How would Sean O'Malley deal with a fighter like John Dotson, who has power, who is fast? Can O'Malley stay in front of him? Can he keep Dotson at the end of his jab? Can he keep Dotson off his legs? That's a good fight for me if Brian Caraway is not available.
John gets the 10 points. I like that answer. Some really good answers there. I will say, obviously, Merab Dvalishvili, he wants that Sean O'Malley fight. He really wants. He's doubled down on it. Now he's tripled down on it. Brian Kelleher's called for that fight. Montel Jackson would be super interesting, but it's way too soon to book those two guys because I think the UFC is a lot invested in the future between both those guys. And I think if you take one of those guys out right now, not a good thing. Let them meet up a little bit down the road. That's my opinion on that. Craig, do you want to say something, buddy?
No, I mean, I see what Keith put in our little chat, and he did mean to say Brian Kelleher, but why not take a flyer and see what Brian Caraway's up to these days?
Hey, listen, in all fairness, John didn't even watch the fight anyways. It was the prelims, so we know he didn't even watch it.
Keith, are you just now revealing to everyone that I don't watch the prelims? Oh my God, you have exposed our recap show. No one's ever going to take us seriously again. Our recap show used to be serious until people found out I don't watch the prelims.
Hopefully there's no Bellator questions.
There you go. There's the total points thus far. As we move into question number 4, we put UFC 248 in the back burner. The UFC heading to Brasilia, and it's an interesting card. We get some good fights. A couple of great fights up the top, in my opinion. We get the main event, lightweight division, Kevin Lee taking on Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Co-main event, we got the legend, multiple-time former world title challenger Damian Maia facing Gilbert Burns. So my question is, Craig Allen, which of these two fights has your attention more on this Monday evening and why?
You know what, Mike? And I'm going to go at this from an analytical and statistical type of look. And it's the eye test. Charles Oliveira has the most submissions in UFC history. He has the second most finishes in UFC history. He has the highest finish to win percentage in the UFC. Like, it's absolutely insane what he's been able to do. But to crack that upper echelon, he's just never been able to do it. You look at some of the losses, guys like Max Holloway, Paul Felder, guys that are still at the top of their respected divisions. But he's able to put together a 6-fight win streak over, yes, recognizable names. The Nick Lentz fights are always fun. But realistically, you look at his last win, a knockout over Jared Gordon, and a lot of people are quick to point out, hey, that's not really indicative of a fight against a guy like Kevin Lee. And Kevin Lee's one of those statistical matchups that a lot of people say he would really cause fits for your current champion, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Not to say that Tony Ferguson wouldn't, but to me, Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee are the two big what-ifs against Khabib. We already know what happened with Conor McGregor. Yes, Justin Gaethje would be fun. We saw what happened against Dustin Poirier. So to me, if Kevin Lee can beat Charles Oliveira, it doesn't say a whole lot, but it says, hey, he's that one step closer in a really stacked top end of a division. But for Charles Oliveira, if he can get a win, wow, all of a sudden, all the doubt that's crept up with Charles Oliveira goes away. And all of a sudden you see him take on the upper echelon in that division. And you saw how the weight cut really affected him at 145 pounds. He's been able to look great at 155. Maybe there's a run in Charles Oliveira and a perfect opportunity for him in Brazil. I think it's an awesome matchup, especially in a main event in a 5-round fight. Kevin Lee at TriStars looked great. Charles Oliveira training at Shoot the Box in Sao Paulo, an awesome camp there as well. So I'm really looking forward to both fights. But to me, the main event's awesome.
Davidson, we had a very similar question last week. We had, intrigue on both the main event and the co-main event. Obviously, there's more stakes in those fights, but there's some pretty significant stakes on Saturday as well. So what fight are you looking forward to the most? Which fight are you giving more attention to? Are you giving it to Lee Oliveira? Are you giving it to Maya Burns?
They're both great fights. And while one with a bloodlust for sanctioned and competitive violence of any kind can appreciate a clash between world-class grapplers, potentially turning into a glorified kickboxing match, it's definitely the main event for me. And Craig highlighted a lot of reasons why. I don't think people really understand or have allowed the reality to set in of just how not only absolutely massive Kevin Lee's previous win was, but of course, add on top of it, how he did it. And then add on top of that, who he did it to. And weirdly enough, as far as this matchup is concerned, we know what we're going to get with Burns and Maya if it hits the mat. High-level jiu-jitsu, world-class grappling exchanges, and that's absolutely fantastic. I'm here for it. I'm sure anyone that loves this sport would be. But one of the reasons, obviously, outside of position in the lightweight rankings, this main event is so fascinating and has me amped for it, is that entity of the unknown that MMA fans crave. What does happen if Leon Oliveira does hit the mat? We all know by now that Oliveira can snatch necks, arms, limbs, whatever you want to call it, and submits anyone that he possibly can and has done so more than anyone else in UFC history. But Oliveira isn't known per se for his BJJ credentials. He's just fantastic with his MMA grappling and how he uses it in fights. And what if Kevin Lee just says screw it and just tries to power double him right out of the gates? I mean, the unwritten pages that follow that introduction, let alone what's going to happen if these two stay on the feet, two guys that have improved vastly on the feet over the past year and a half, 2 years, however many years you want to call it, is fascinating to me, and I can't wait to see it.
Chicken Parm Dave, what do you got your attention focused on more, the main event or the co-main event on Saturday?
This is the no-brainer of all time. Mike, one thing that was very prevalent in the 80s was people solving crimes that were not detectives or cops for that matter. They just did it, right? So Simon and Simon, Heart to Heart, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Hardcastle and McCormick, Jake and the Fat Man, all people that just, for whatever reason, just decided to solve crimes. So if you like the format of that, then you would watch those shows, right? That's Maya Burns. If you like to watch grappling, you watch that. I personally think something like that should be on Submission Underground, which is my new fascination. It should be where we know we're going to get grappling out of these guys, not where there could be a fight and maybe some grappling. But Mike, in the 80s, if you wanted a star and you wanted a star to solve crimes, it was Magnum P.I. Magnum P.I., Tom Selleck. Thomas Magnum was the guy that was there for you to solve crimes, be a stud. He was in Hawaii, dope car. That's Kevin Lee. That's Drew Bronx. These guys are stars. They have it all written all over them. I want to see these guys go further. I want to see them. I like star making. Me and Keith joke all the time. I'm half a hardcore and I'm half a casual. This weekend, I'm full casual. I want to see one of these guys come out, take a star turn, and ride it into some real relevance in that division. There's a lot of stars in that division already. I want even more. I want these guys to be right there, getting bandied about for title shots and top 5 fights. Kevin Lee, Drew Bronx, that's the star shot. Let me have it. Thomas Magnum, wherever you are, there's my salute.
Keith, before you answer this question, I got to know, who pissed in your Cheerios today? Because you are just not a happy camper. I don't know if it's the flow of the show or what, but you're just not happy tonight. There's not that's like the first half a smirk you've given in the last 43 minutes and 38 seconds.
Well, listen, would you be happy if you had to listen to these 3 buffoons talk for the last 10 minutes? Listen.
While we're talking, he's been landing planes as well. He's working air traffic control in between.
I know. Yeah, literally, Craig is making jokes about my AirPods. He's wearing the same freaking ones as me. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense. And, so yeah, I wonder why John really loves Submission Underground, because he wants to be Chael Sonnen. It's we get it. And I didn't know Charles Oliveira was a star. His last fight was against freaking Jared Gordon.
He wins this fight, he'll be one.
I mean, I guess beating Kevin Lee would make you a star. But that said, I'm going to go with Oliveira and Lee. I mean, you got the number 8 guy ranked against the number 13 guy. You got a 27-year-old going against a 30-year-old, not a 42-year-old against a 33-year-old. I mean, Damon Maia is already talking about retirement. He's had title shots. He's never going to be a contender. So, like, I can't really get excited when I don't see a future in a guy. And then it's just a better stylistic matchup. You have the boxing, wrestling style of Kevin Lee. You know, he can do both standing and feet. And then you have the BJJ and unbelievable improved Muay Thai of Charles Oliveira that doesn't get enough credit for. And then when you talk about, you know, everyone talks, if you like jiu-jitsu and you like Maia and you like Burns, yeah, as Davidson said, they might have better credentials. But Charles Oliveira is the one who actually submits guys. He's got more submissions than both those guys. So, I mean, the fight is more relevant in terms of a title position. And look at the odds. It's basically a pick'em. While Burns is a pretty big favorite against Damian Maia, as he should be at this point in Maia's career. So, you know, give me 5 rounds of Lee and Oliveira over 3 rounds of Damian Maia and Gilbert Burns. To me, this is an easy pick.
All right. And this is an easy pick for me, too, because I feel like we've turned the corner here. We've calmed down a little bit. We've gone from a 10 to about a 6.5 now, which is great for the show. So we're going to keep Davidson around. He gets the 10 points. And we're going to go 4 to the final question of regulation. Call me a coward. Call me what you will. But I want to hear what everyone has to say here, because I love the under-the-radar storylines. I love fights and storylines that aren't getting the shine that maybe they should. And we got 2 cards coming up this weekend. We got UFC Brasilia. We got Bellator 241 on Friday at Mohegan Sun. It's a fun weekend of MMA action. So let's put some shine on these under-the-radar fights and storylines. Davidson, what's the one that you're looking at, whether it be a fight or a storyline that you have your eye on that maybe people right now don't? Sell them on that if you would.
I'd like to sell people on this card, honestly. And while UFC fight cards that head south of the equator are normally a little bit left to be desired as far as the face value side of things are concerned, this card is really solid, especially for a fight night card. And like I said, especially for one in Brazil. And I could go all MMA nerd boy and splurge over Capoeira versus Konchenko, or Formiga versus Craig Allen's flyweight champion of the world, Brandon Moreno. Well, they're both great fights in their own right, but I'm going to be willing to pose to this esteemed panel hosts and all those that are listening, any wager, any stakes, any risk. I will come on this show next week, the week after it, haircut, hair dyed, whatever. If Nikita Krylov and Johnny Walker go 15 minutes, you name it, I'll do it. And as far as the fight is concerned, I will do anything within obvious, realistic realm of possibility for the sake of my humiliation that I was wrong if this fight goes to the scorecards. And as far as the fight stakes are concerned, the 205-pound title contention ladder doesn't necessarily hold either of these guys' names in the near future, especially not just with one win. But it's a big fight for both individuals. Both of these guys obviously nowhere near undefeated, but have lost in the past, and most of the time losing by finish the way Johnny Walker did in his last fight. Walker and Krylov are going to be trying to make that climb up to the top of the 205-pound ladder, which at this point, outside of the top, seems a little bit wide open to get some new names in underneath the Reyeses and the Rakic's and the Blachowicz of the world. But really, I don't think either of these guys can afford to drop a second in a row if they want to keep those dreams alive. And some absolute bloodlusting violence on the side of it. Cannot wait for that fight.
John, what you got? I'm excited, baby. I hope you pick a Bellator fight. I'm really, really intrigued here.
Please, I wasn't even aware Bellator had a card. So let's move on to the UFC and who I'm picking. Listen, Davidson kind of alluded to it a little bit. What I'm looking for here is who wants to be head of the class at 125 pounds. All right, Benavidez, he's been around forever. All right, I get it. It's over. The other kid, Figueiredo, doesn't even want to make weight. They don't want to grab this thing, right? So who knows, part-time, and he cares more about 125 than any of these guys. Giuseppe Formiga, Brandon Moreno. People can't stop talking to me, all the hipsters. They want me to love Brandon Moreno. I just want somebody to go out there and say, this division is mine. This division is going to be around for a while. I want him to cut a great promo. I want someone to tell me, you know, Craig and I do this thing. We just started on early stoppage, the ES5, right? So last week, the ES5, I'll hit you very quickly. The 5 most relevant things: Khabib, Tony, Connor's next opponent, Dan Hooker, Cejudo and who John Jones is going to pick for his next fight. Give me a fight and give me a guy that cuts a promo and puts himself on the map that makes 125 pounds worthy of the ES5, worthy of one of the 5 most relevant stories, because it's right there because of how much it's not cared about. So make people care about it. You have an active audience that's waiting for somebody to just grab this thing and run with it. So let's have it. Formiga Moreno, that's the under the radar fight. Let's do it.
Keith, I want you to answer the question, but I have to be honest with the people here. I did listen to the latest episode of Early Stoppage, and I did see the introduction of the ES5, and the first thing that came to my mind was, this sounds vaguely familiar on the Podcast Network. Does it not, Keith?
Yeah, it sounds. It's funny because I thought there was another show on our network that was doing like top 5 news stories thing and leads every single show with that. I wonder where they got that from. But hey, yeah, as John said, that Joseph Benavidez, he said his exact words is it's all over for him. Didn't tell that to Dana White, who's already said that Joseph Benavidez, Davidson Figueiredo is going to fight for the flyweight title. So I don't know what he's talking about, but Formiga and Moreno being like a title, I guess they could be number 1 contender match, I guess, after that. And David, what the hell is David's talking about? Name anything? If this fight goes to decision? Like, Nikita Krylov's last fight went to a decision. Like, what are you talking about? Listen, this will be out of the box. I will go way out of the box because, like, and under the radar. How can we call Figueiredo, Formiga and Moreno under the radar when freaking Craig Allen brings up Brandon Moreno every single week? I will go really under the radar. Like, I will go not only go to Bellator, I'm going to go to the Bellator prelims. If you want to listen, right now, Chris Cyborg there's not a single person who's standing out to be the next title challenger, but that could actually change Friday night. Right now, when you look at the top featherweights in Cyborg's division, she just beat Julia Budd. Talita Nogueira is coming off a loss to the person I'm about to mention. Kat Zingano, who knows where she is. Arlene Blenco's last fight for the title was an absolute snoozer, was one of the worst fights ever. So right now, how about the stakes that Jesse Mealy, SureDog.com's number 7 real rankings, not that garbage typology crap that Craig brings up, is heading into going against Leslie Smith, the biggest fight of her career. If she beats Leslie Smith, she might fight Chris Cyborg for the title next. I mean, she'd be on a 5-fight winning streak, which when you think about a 5-fight winning streak in the women's featherweight division, it's like 20 in any other division. They love coming to Connecticut. She's from Connecticut. If she wins, they'll be back in Connecticut 4 or 5 months from now. How about ultimate Rocky story? Chris Cyborg, a massive favorite, going against Jesse Mealy for the title in Mealy's hometown. It feel like Rocky won. There you go. That's the under radar story.
I had 2 picked out for you, and you picked one of the 2. Craig has the hot take shades back on. I'm looking at not 1 but 2 laptops in the frames right now. Looks like Craig has maybe got pocket jacks here, and he's about to re-raise. Go ahead.
Mike, listen, I love Bellator as much as the next guy. And the Taka brothers are fighting. You have a weird, it's a setup, but you have a weird maybe next title challenger against either Gegard Mousasi or Douglas Lima in the Taka fight against the import Brazilian who hasn't fought in forever. But realistically, it's a UFC card. Now, before every single Fight Night Pick show, I'm not joking. You can laugh at me. It's a song that came out before I was born, but I'm going to start singing because I know it bothers Keith, but John will love this. Here I am in the city on a fistful of dollars. And baby, you better believe I'm back in the New York groove. I like Ace Frehley, and I'm glad that Kiss gave him the platform to have that song. Now, my point is, Keith talked about this earlier on in the show, and it's the fact that they're back. The flyweights are back. And listen, while I love the assassin baby Brandon Moreno, and I believe that it'll be the UFC's flyweight champ by the end of 2020, you have a fight earlier on in that card, and it's a fight between one of the biggest gyms. You've got Henry Cejudo's training partner, the Pitbull's training partner, Bruno Silva, a guy that people are already familiar with from the Ultimate Fighter Season 4 Brazil. He was on Team Silva, Team Nogueira. Yes, his career hasn't gone all that great. In his UFC debut, he lost to Khalid Taha, who missed weight and then failed the USADA test due to a diuretic. So it didn't go well for old Mr. Taha. But that loss on Bruno Silva's record will eventually end up as no contest. So realistically, his record should be, and I say this with a grain of saltiness, 10-3-2 with 1 no contest. He's taking on Czech Republic's David Dvorak. And why am I talking about somebody becoming a star? David Dvorak's won 13 fights in a row. He has 15 of 17 wins by stoppage, 8 by knockout, 7 by submission. He's an absolute finisher. If you watch any of his fights, he's the complete package. I don't know how he hasn't been in the UFC any sooner. His last fight was a possible eliminator to a shot at a UFC contract and a guy that was 16-2. You don't see regional guys with records like that. I think realistically, David Dvorak and Bruno Silva, it's an awesome stylistic matchup. Dvorak's the complete package. Bruno Silva's a little pocket rocket that can bang and stand and trade with the rest of them. And this is a division that the last time I checked had 16 fighters. So you add 2 more guys to the mix. How could you not get excited? It's one of the most dynamic divisions in the UFC. Flyweights never die.
Can I ask her a question? Can I ask her? I'm not trying to like rebuttal. Just ask what team does Dvorak fight for? Because I don't know. Because you said 2 of the biggest camps.
Yeah, Pitbull Brothers. I mean, you've got Cejudo there. Eric Albarracin is head coach. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's a reason why it's flying on the radar, because if you're going to talk about the Pitbull Brothers and the team having a rivalry, we might go to what happened at Bellator today with the. Sorry.
I forgot to say this. David Dvorak trains at a London Shoot Fighters with Amir Albazi's the main training partner. You've got Michael Venom Page. You've got Norbert Novigny training there. You got a lot of big names.
Yeah, his team cares about him so much that all that team is at Bellator cornering in Pitbull going against SBG, where the 2 teams had to get separated today at Bellator. So yeah, I don't know.
What does that have to do with the grittiness of that fight? How good it is?
Well, you're talking about like how good you're talking about like 2 teams and how good
the strength of training all the way until his fight. They can't fight for him, Keith. The last time I checked, unless you're Conor McGregor, and you jump
like there's a big rivalry going on with their teams. Like, no, the Pitbulls have a rivalry with SBG. That's the rivalry that their entire team is focused on.
Yeah, good job, Keith. I sold you Wolf tickets on an early prelim fight at flyweight, and you used your chance to rebuttal that you didn't have against me and sounded like a donkey.
All right, hold on. You
can just like you sound like a donkey because I just won. Like.
Listen. We have glazed over the most important thing that was said during this entire round, and that is the fact that Davidson Baker is willing to do just about anything within reason if Johnny Walker and Nikita Krylov goes to decision.
I want to point out,
rooting for with full on excitement, because this is the time. We have angry Keith. We have. We're just kind of the levels go down a little bit from here. So we have to, as a panel and as a crew, we have to come up with something for Davidson to do should this fight go to a decision.
And I want to point out too, yes, Keith, you are correct. Nikita Krylov's last fight went to decision. And if you're keeping score at home of his 33 fights, those that have gone to decision and those that have not, it is 32-1 in terms of fights not going to the scorecards or not. I'll go ahead and take those
tell me there's
with Johnny Walker opposite.
So you tell me he's set a pattern right now.
Well, I mean, he's not on the right pattern, but hey, I'm keeping things interesting. I'm letting things flow. If you guys say pink faux hawk if they go full 15 minutes, I must abide by my honors. I'm not setting that as the precedent. I'm just saying I love this fight, and I know it's not going to go to the scorecards.
Hang on. I know just the right person to start this with, and that is the man rubbing his hands together right now. Chicken Parm Dave seems to be the perfect starting point, and I think we could build upon him before we say goodbye to a couple of you gentlemen. But Chicken Parm Dave, please, what are you thinking here?
Franklin?
I don't hate the pink faux hawk. I would like a pink mohawk better. I think what you should have to do is shave your head into like male pattern baldness, like when a guy's going bald, like shave the middle and leave the sides. That's what I think you should have to do.
Oh man, wait, say that again. So like
male pat. So when a guy's going bald and he just has the sides, and then all this is gone. That's
the Larry David.
The Larry David. There it is.
It's a hockey guy.
Like Larry David. And luckily for all of us here, there is a woman in the same household as I right now that cuts hair for a living. So this is a very doable thing. We're putting it out on the air right now.
If you're in on this,
I'll do it. Yeah.
If that fight goes to decision, you're going to come on the show
looking
like the Larry David haircut.
And I got like little Hogwarts glasses I'll wear too.
Holy shitballs. This might be the best thing ever in Between the Links history.
Fight can be over.
Does anyone have anything better than that? Because I think that's tremendous.
I mean,
Sean does.
Sean Santello's already had the pink mohawk, so you're just copying him.
Oh, the Larry David. The
Yeah,
Larry
I'm
David.
in. I agree with the Larry David.
Larry David it is.
All right. Well, we're gonna get you all sorts of focused Davidson Baker on that.
Oh, we got to get that song for when you introduce
definitely.
him. Oh, we got to get that song for when you introduce him, Mike.
Oh, for sure. We will make that happen. But
All right.
This fight's going to be over in 90 seconds. None of this is going to happen anyway.
Your hair's going to be over in 90 seconds.
God, I hope you're wrong. I hope this goes to the third round.
God, I really hope
we're going to be hitting Davidson up and we tweeting his ass. I'm very excited for that. But with that being said,
strut my mug being Larry Davidson around in public, man.
Oh, Larry Davidson. That's
a
nice touch.
Excellent.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
It's even better.
What have I done?
What have I done to
myself?
It's going to be like Perfect Strangers. Yes. And I dropped my reference. That being said, the final round, it has to be this way. Craig Allen taking on Keith Schillen. Anger versus calmness. One poking and prodding the other reacting. This is going to be great. We got the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. Very excited. Davidson, I am looking forward to Saturday. I've never been more excited to share a fight card with you via social media. Any final words?
No Larry Davidsons are in my future. No. Especially not at my work, not at my job. My boss will light me on fire. I'll see you guys next week, hopefully with my hair intact.
Oh, man. Something to look forward to. Davidson, good job, man. All right. Chicken Parm Dave, you know I'm going to ask you to do.
Chicken Parm's hanging out.
All right, Chicken Parm's hanging out. Judge Chicken Parm Dave. Before we head to the finals, before we get the matchup you guys have all been seeking, make sure you subscribe to this here YouTube channel and the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. So much freaking content on this network. I can't go through it all because it's going to take us 30 minutes. We're already a few minutes behind. So find out what I'm talking about for yourself. You will be glad that you did. Craig Allen, 1 to 25.
6.
Keith.
7.
4 is the number. Craig, kicking off or receiving?
I will defer to Keith.
You guys knew I was going low, didn't you? All right. So Keith versus Craig. Keith, we're going to start with you. Let's talk about something that happened over the weekend that made headlines. On Friday, the UFC held a press conference before the weigh-ins to help promote UFC 249. We had Khabib Nurmagomedov, Tony Ferguson. All hell was breaking loose. It was weird. It was wild. It was fun. We had all sorts of crazy insults thrown around. But there was one moment that wasn't all that fun. It was a little awkward. We had our friend, fellow media member, and former guest of the show, Rodney James Edgar. He was about to ask Tony Ferguson a question about his mental health. And before he could even get his question fully out, Ferguson says, F you to Rodney, who then, like a pro, in my opinion, he tried to follow up. Tony shut him down again. And it was just kind of a weird moment in that press conference and a weird moment of the weekend as well. And I think Rodney's a great guy. I think his work is great. I think he's a freaking grinder and a hustler, and I will respect that 100%. But there's two sides to this equation, much like a lot of these topics. We get Tony Ferguson, one of the best fighters in lightweight history, a guy who's had some demons like all of us. You get Rodney James Edgar just trying to ask a question and shine a light here. So my question to you, Keith, is who was right, who was wrong, and what did you make of that whole thing?
She's a brick and I'm drowning slowly. Oh, I has nothing to do with this show, but you like singing, and that's kind of Craig's gimmick. So I just kind of stole his answer. And that song is about abortion, and this show is pretty much like an abortion.
Oh my God, flag.
Whose side am I on? I mean, as you said, Rodney was being professional. He was asking a question, and Tony came off like a dick. But why did he come off like a dick? Because he does have mental illness, and the reason why I deal with the mentally ill every single day with my job. I deal with the mentally ill every Monday night at 9 p.m. when I come on the show. But mental illness, the problem is we make it like it's an embarrassing thing to talk about mental illness. It is mental illness, mental disease is as real as cancer. If someone has cancer, we don't like point at them like they did something wrong. It's something that's a chemical imbalance in your brain, or if someone broke their leg, we don't say like, we don't use it against their character, and that's what the stigma we put on society is that that people should be ashamed to have to deal with mental illness. And I understand where Tony's coming from, why he said like fuck you, because he was embarrassed. He's embarrassed that someone would bring it up, and not only do you have a stadium full of people watching, and then you got God knows how many people at home watching. So that's why he reacted that way. Plus, I mean, this thing's mentally wrong with him. He's not going to be saying. I mean, you just watch that whole press conference. He's all over the place. I mean, Habib was saying it perfectly when he was calling him like dumb thinking. What he really meant was like crazy. He just didn't translate Russian. So, I mean, Rodney handled it perfect as good as you can, and as you can deal with anybody who has mental illness. He couldn't talk sense into him, especially when he was trying to give him props. And he was kind of, I saw an interview with him, and he's basically saying that he was going to follow up. Was going to be like, what do you have to say to fans who might be dealing with the same thing or people like that? He was going to use it as a very positive moment. And to me, Tony Ferguson, he took a step back for all the people that deal with mental illness. I think it was a terrible, terrible moment for Tony Ferguson.
Craig, we go to you. You got Rodney, you got Tony. To be fair to Tony, because we got to be fair to everybody here, Tony did talk about it when he was in Chicago last year, and he said he was going to address it once and one time only, and he wasn't going to talk about it again. And then Rodney brought up the question. I understand where Rodney was coming from. So with all that being said, who is right, who is wrong? Because I mean, it's just an interesting situation. I know what Rodney was trying to do, but Tony was also clear at different points that he didn't want to talk about it. So what's your take on it?
Let's go to his answer from the question before, where he said that I have the right support in place around me. I have new management and whatnot. What is the definition of support? Is it just management? Is it family situation? Is it a combination of the two? But realistically, you look at this, and the precedent was set earlier on this year when a great Canadian, Morgan P. Campbell, asked a question at a presser about Conor McGregor's allegations that were going on in Ireland, and he was promptly shut down. The internet attacked him and what have you. It's kind of the same situation. These UFC press conferences aren't where you can dig up great details. You've seen some of the questions. I mean, what was a question that was thrown out there for UFC 246? Conor McGregor, you're awesome because you're making us money. You're making Vegas money. That was like a legit statement that was made by a member at one of these pressers. You have questions from all different spectrums. You get the MMA junkies, the MMA fightings. You get some of the smaller publications. It takes everybody at these pressers. But also there's another X factor. Fans are allowed in here. Fans have a say at these. And you're talking about a guy that brought a baseball and a pair of biking gloves to sit on stage and talk in front of fans. He's going to try and rile them up. He's going to try and say things to get them going. And he promptly shut down Rodney. So it's tough to say that there's any blame to go around, but it's one of those questions that you probably knew what might happen. His heart was definitely in the right place. And I understand him asking the question, but ultimately he was the one that asked the question.
All right, Keith, I want to go back to you here because there's some interesting points brought up. Luke Thomas tweeted out on Friday after that moment. He defended Rodney, by the way. And he said, these events are for the fans. They're not for the media. Like these are supposed to be to build the fight up to the fans. It's not for the media to just ask a bunch of questions and create headlines. That's what they're meant to be because there's certain handcuffs put on the media members in terms of what can be asked and what can't. So one of the things the UFC has done recently is instead of doing like press conferences, so to speak, they actually bring the champions and the blue corner in one little Q&A with the fans, and Megan O'Leary or John Anik is the host, and then they do the same thing with the other corner. Should they do something similar during these press conferences? Maybe have the fans bring in the questions, and then Megan O'Leary ask them, and then you're still going to get the same stuff from both fighters, are we not?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to get into that. I don't know if Craig ever took a side who was at fault there, but if you don't want serious questions, then don't invite the media to be there. It's plain and simple, as you said. As far as Tony saying, I'm going to talk about this once, I'm going to talk about it again. Well, that's not how the rules work. Like if Ray Borg said, I miss weight, I'm going to bring it up one time, I'm never going to bring it up again, and then he misses weight, we're not going to ask Ray Borg about weight issues the next time. Like that's just not how it works. As far as what should they do? Yeah, I mean, if they want it to be a fan affair and get headlines, yeah, you have Karen Bryant, you have Megan O'Leary, but honestly, you know who'd be the perfect person to ask questions? Well, I know who my judge is, so the perfect person to ask questions is forget Karen Bryant and Megan O'Leary, bring Chael Sonnen up and have him ask the questions, and then it would be a perfect press conference.
Wow. Craig, what are your thoughts on that? Should we take the media out of this equation, let the fans ask pretty much the same questions, and then that alleviates any issues we had on Friday, Morgan Campbell stuff, and then the UFC is going to put a stop to crazy questions anyway. So this way we just take it out of the equation.
Mike and Keith, And John, I think you could help me out with this one. But if I'm not mistaken, this is normally how fight week goes. I've only ever done one, and it was in this city, Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. I'm pretty sure on Wednesday you had media day, correct? Where it's closed doors with just media.
Wednesday is open workouts.
Thursday.
Okay, so Thursday. Thursday is the day where you get to ask your questions. Then there could be a fan event, and then they put both of them together, and then you have what you had with Tony Ferguson and Khabib. Now, that's a little different. Don't get me wrong, because that's trying to hype a fight that's in the future, whereas the rest of the steps are to hype the now. But you're going to get a chance down the road to ask those tough questions if you so see it fit. So, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Should we not have fans at the media questions, what have you? You get your chances. I know you want to have your stories for now, but you get that chance later on down the road. So just keep doing the way you're doing it. It's a little bit different from like NFL football because you're not really going to hype up a game that's months and months down the road with fans behind you when Darren Rovell's trying to ask stat questions about what's on the back of somebody's football card. But I'm fine with the way that things are now. You have to know what you're getting into.
Yeah. And this is not me taking a side either. I'm standing right in the middle and just trying to play somewhat devil's advocate here. I mean, it's just the way that it is because I want to get your perspectives on that. Rodney, I thought, handled himself like an absolute champion, and I think that's my biggest takeaway of all of this. Go ahead, Keith.
The only thing, I totally agree. Rodney was great in this, and I'm not just saying it because he's been on the show, because I'm not scared to bash media. But Tony Ferguson, he just simply said, "Listen, dude, it's the wrong place to talk about this. I'm not going to answer that question." Done. Then he doesn't really come on. He doesn't come off like a dick. He comes off mature.
I wonder if he regrets it and then would go back and do it all over again. He might. At this point, we got to bring in the man, the myth, the legend, John Franklin, who is now known as Chicken Parm Dave. Judge Chicken Parm Dave, all rise. What is your decision, Your Honor?
So this took a lot of twists and turns for me. I think both the guys did. So what I try and do best when I do this is separate the rest of the show from this. And I think Keith had a little bit of a roller coaster of a show, but I think in the finals, he kind of pulled everything together. And I do think, while I think Craig gave a really, really good answer at times, very eloquent, I don't think that he was as steadfast to what his take was as Keith was. So I'm going to give Keith the win. So we'll just get that out of the way. And
neither one of you listened to the end of my first answer, you donkeys.
So listen, there's plenty of time to interrupt me on early stoppage. You certainly do a great job of that. So here, but listen, this is what I want to say. I think when you're assessing this, you have to figure out who got accomplished what they wanted to get accomplished, right? Did Rodney get an answer to the question that he wanted to ask, and was it the right play? Now listen, I DM'd Rodney as soon as it happened. I said, you handled yourself like a champ. Great, good on you. And I do think he handled himself like a champ because Rodney, a lot of people may not know, is also a fighter. And Rodney is not in the business of having people tell him, fuck you, whether it's Tony Ferguson or anybody. Right now, that doesn't sit well with a guy like Rodney. I've been around him, trust me. So, but he handled himself like a professional because that's the capacity that he was in. But did he get accomplished what he wanted to get accomplished? No, he asked a question that he probably should have known wasn't going to get the answer that he wanted. Did Tony Ferguson accomplish what he wanted to accomplish? Absolutely. Now, everybody that wants to talk about his mental health should be expecting a fuck you, just like Rodney got. So I think that Tony accomplished more of what he wanted to do. Yeah, he was a dick in doing it, but I think that he accomplished more of what he was trying to do. Could he have handled it better? Like he said, absolutely. Should we have fans? I think there needs to be more of a separation between fans and media at those events. Because Rodney said, hey, Tony Ferguson follows me. He must not have recognized me. Well, dude, you're in a crowd. This guy doesn't know you from somebody that stole a selfie with him in the middle of Caesar's Palace. So you got to understand, if you're going to pass the microphone to fans and you're going to pass the microphone to media, you have to have a distinction between the two. So that a guy like Tony, now he shouldn't say that to either person, media or fans, but he was trying to get something accomplished. He was trying to put an end to these questions, and I think he did. So again, Keith gets the win because really there is no right answer. You know, Rodney handled himself really well in what happened, but maybe should have been a little more self-aware. Tony definitely should have been more self-aware, but he actually got accomplished what he wanted to get accomplished. So the W goes to Keith. All the things that come with it. Which isn't much, if we're being honest, but you know, he's got the bracket rights. So back to you, Mike.
And his natural color is back too. He's very happy and excited to come away with the win. Craig Allen, not so much. We'll get to you in a moment. Keith, 30 seconds. What would you like to say?
Well, the first thing is you got to realize is Ben Folds 5. Who would have thought that would bring peace to the show? And and I mean, I probably could have sang the whole song while John was talking. It's about the same length. Now, listen, if we want to talk about how unprofessional Tony Ferguson is, the only person that was more unprofessional this weekend was Brian Ortega. I mean, seriously, dude, he went up and slapped a translator because the guy translated what the Korean Zombie said. And what's even more of like poor is that he went to attack the translator when the Korean Zombie walked away, not when he was there. It's like Brian Ortega, this is supposed to be like the nice guy and the Modell's commercial and stuff, but really, really bad moment from him. And the UFC should take action about that because there shouldn't be fans should not be. I mean, in essence, Jay Park's just a fan, and fans should not be getting attacked by a UFC fighter. The UFC needs to do something about this, and there needs to be punishment on Brian Ortega.
Yeah, it's interesting. In any other sport, they'd probably get released or, suspended for a whole year. You don't really see that a whole heck of a lot in MMA. Craig's got the hot take shades on. What you got, buddy?
I directed the song at Keith Schillen earlier on tonight, but Mike, I'm going to direct it at you because you were the silent bidder here. Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me? Listen, Mike, I think that was terrible judging, and I think we know who won the fight. And if it was open scoring, I certainly would have won the entire fight. But apparently it isn't, and we're not in Missouri, so it doesn't matter.
It was open scoring all night.
Oh, whatever. Now in terms...
Wasn't it in Kansas?
Yeah, I don't care anymore. Everything blends together after a while.
Kansas and then your Missouris. Come on, Trump.
The one thing I want to say is that I think David Dvorak and Bruno Silva is going to be a banger of a fight. And I had all those numbers up here. And that's just wasted space in my brain that I'm never going to get back. But in terms of Keith's point, I have the memory of an elephant. And I can remember baseball card statistics like the Darren Rovell stuff from when I was a little kid. I could tell you David Ortiz's batting average in 2004. In terms of Brian Ortega, remember that Instagram video of what he was yelling at Jeremy Stevens after the first Jerry Rodriguez fight? I remember that, and it wasn't very PG. This guy doesn't have a great track record, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. So hopefully he's able to right the ship, but it was not a good look this past weekend.
I mean, honestly, and Brian Ortega can say whatever he wants about me, but at the end of the day, does the UFC suffer that much if Brian Ortega gets released? Does it? Does 145 like really take a huge nosedive? Like this is the end of the division? Does it hurt them that badly? No, I don't think so. I like the guy. He's a good fighter.
He's a guy though that you have to figure out his relevance in another organization. Like he's not going to ruin 45, but how much does he help Bellator?
Is Halle Berry going to start showing up to Bellator events? I don't think so.
Yeah, but no. All joke aside, imagine if someone got mad at Halle Berry because Halle Berry said, I love Weili Zhang, what a performance, and then Joanna Jędrzejczyk punch Halle Berry. Imagine if that happened. I think the UFC would take action then. So when you have like some low rates, I didn't know who Jay Park was until this story. I guess he's some kind of celebrity, but
he's a rapper. Yeah. He's a rapper.
Oh, well, I don't
yeah,
know.
I mean, and just the way he did it too. Wait till TKZ went to the bathroom and then he goes after Jay Park. Like, just kind of like it was just kind of a real shitty thing.
If you're gonna cut Paul Daly for punching Josh Koscheck and you claim that's the reason why, then they should totally do the same thing with Brian Ortega. I think cutting him would actually send a message to the rest of the guys.
I'm gonna put this out there, and I bet you that it's gonna get me slapped by Brian Ortega. But there's a little known thing called pretty boy syndrome, and it's when guys are too good looking, everybody thinks they're soft, so they have to prove they're tough. Brian Ortega's got pretty boy syndrome.
Craig has to do that when he's at NEF every month, every few months.
They sit me next to the stage. I'm not joking. Probably just to see what happens.
to get your ass on camera.
There's that too.
All right, we've gone way over time here, but what a roller coaster of emotions through this episode of Between the Links on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. Big thank you to Chicken Parm Dave for stepping up tonight and judging like an absolute champion. Big thank you to Keith and his family who's talking to him right now as we're giving him props. Big thank you to Craig Allen for taking on and off the shades throughout the night. And a big thank you to Davidson Baker from broadcasting from where Mankind used to do his promos in WWE when he first came in from the boiler room somewhere in Oklahoma. So make sure you subscribe.
If I could just for a second, if you're watching on video, if you look at the ratio between Keith's actual ear and the size of the headphone, just, to give you some perspective. I'm not hurling out false accusations. Okay, they're big.
We had Keith relax now. He's realigned his center. You son of a bitch.
Know. I'm sorry.
All right,
Can
we're
you
out of here.
hear me?
All right, we'll be back tomorrow night. Make sure you subscribe to the network. Off the Cuff going down with Craig and Drake and Kyle. It should be a rousing good time with no singing, so Keith might be watching. So for Craig,
wait, you guys
Keith,
got Drake?
Major Tom,
we got what?
can you hear
You guys,
me?
you guys got Drake?
Yeah, we got Drake.
Oh,
We got Drake.
wow.
Drizzy Drake.
6.
All right, for Craig, Keith, Davidson, and Chicken Parm Dave, I am Mike Heck. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. We'll go back once again between the links. What a crazy show.